The red island you see here is Great Britain, which you might also know as the United Kingdom or UK. It's a small country, only about 94,000 square miles. But just 100 years ago, it ruled over 1/4 of the entire world. From North America to Africa, the Middle East and all the way to Australia, it was the most powerful force. In all of human history, there's hardly been an empire so big that the sun was always shining on some part of it. But that same powerful empire is now falling apart. Today, the UK is going through the worst money problems in its entire history. Statistics from 2024 show that the UK's debt is now 99.5% of its total economy. But if you look at the countries next to it, Ireland's debt is only 43% of its economy, and Germany's is 64%. Gang violence and people without homes are at the highest levels in 30 years. In just the last 10 years, the number of homeless people in the UK has gone up by 50%. The high pay that used to bring people from all over the world to London has been stuck at 2008 levels for 16 years. At the same time, prices are rising faster than they have in the last 40 years. Thousands of skilled workers are now leaving the UK to find better jobs. In the world's sixth biggest economy, 10 million people are living in extreme poverty. 2 million people in the UK go a whole day without food at least once a month. And if you don't count London, the UK is as poor as Mississippi, which is the poorest state in America. The NHS, the UK's healthcare system, was once a model for the whole world. But today, it's in such bad shape that 8 million people are on waiting lists for hospitals, even though they are very sick. And it's not just healthcare. Every part of the government is in trouble, from the police to the buses and trains. Today, the UK has become the worst performing developed country in the world. A little while ago, Britain was literally burning. People were setting cars on fire and throwing rocks at houses. The situation is so bad that even Elon Musk tweeted that a civil war in the UK is bound to happen. So what happened to the most powerful country in history? What mistakes did Britain make to end up in such a terrible crisis? Let's find out the truth in this video. This story really starts in 2016, when the UK decided it was going to leave the European Union. On June 23, 2016, a special vote was held. A little over half of the British people voted to leave the European Union. This was the moment that the UK's economic problems really began. This process of the UK leaving the European Union is called Brexit. Now, it's really important to understand a bit of history here, like how and why the European Union was created. When World War II ended, the countries in Europe realized that if they kept fighting each other, they would just waste all their money and resources on armies and defending their borders. If you look at a map of Europe, two things are very clear. First, all the countries are small, and second, they are all connected. European leaders figured that if they kept acting like separate countries, they would never stop fighting and would never be able to grow. So, in 1952, 6 countries got together: Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands. They formed the European Coal and Steel Community to give their economies a big push. Creating this community was a huge help for these countries. For example, after World War II, France needed coal and steel to rebuild, and Germany gave them both at very cheap prices. This way, France got what it needed for a low cost, and Germany easily found a buyer for its resources that was very close by, so it didn't cost much to ship them. In the same way, countries like Italy and Belgium got to sell their goods to big countries like Germany and France. So basically, these 6 countries were trading with each other without any extra taxes or fighting, and their economies started to grow very fast. Seeing this work so well, other countries in Europe started to join this group. By 1993, there were 12 countries in the community, and the European Union had become the most powerful organization in the world. The biggest powers in the world were part of the European Union. And this leads to a very important point. The biggest benefit of being in the European Union was that people in Europe could go to any other European country they wanted. They could work there, start a business, or even build a home. In the same way, goods could be moved between countries without any extra taxes or fees. For instance, a furniture seller in Greece could easily sell his furniture in the UK without paying any extra tax. Being in the EU also gave each country another big plus. When they made trade deals with countries outside Europe, the whole European Union would negotiate for them. And of course, having such a powerful group backing them up gave each country a lot more power in those deals. So if being in the European Union had so many good things, why did the UK leave? There are 3 main reasons. The first reason is that the UK felt like the European Union was getting more out of the deal than they were. For example, between 2012 and 2016, Europe caught 750,000 tons of fish in UK waters, but the UK only caught 90,000 tons in EU waters. Also, in 2013, the UK paid £17 billion into the EU's budget but only got £6.3 billion back. So, the British felt like other European countries were taking advantage of them. The second reason was people moving to the UK from other countries. The European Union now included countries like Poland, the Czech Republic and Hungary. Because Eastern Europe was much poorer than Western Europe, people from these countries started moving to the UK. We actually just made a video about why Eastern Europe became so poor, while Western Europe got rich. Because of this, the number of people in the UK from other countries went from 5.3 million in 2004 to 9.5 million in 2021. Then, in 2010, wars started in the Arab world, and Europe opened its borders to people trying to escape. Most of these people started to head toward Britain. Here too, Britain felt like this EU decision was affecting it the most. Because of all the new people coming in, things like public services, jobs and pay in the UK started to feel strained. People started to believe that the EU's rules were the real cause of all their problems. And this led to the third reason. British people started wanting to have control over their own country again. They felt that Britain could make better decisions on its own and didn't need to carry the weight of the EU's choices. After this, the vote was held in 2016 and Britain left the European Union. But it didn't go the way people expected. Brexit started to have a very bad effect on the UK. A report from the Bank of England showed that between 2016 and 2021, after Brexit, investment in England dropped by 25%. Then, COVID happened, and the Russia-Ukraine war started, which just made the problems worse. On one hand, there was less investment. On the other hand, Britain was spending a lot of money to help Ukraine against Russia. And on top of that, because of rules against Russia, it couldn't buy cheap oil and gas from them either. And after Brexit, the UK's ability to trade with other countries was badly hurt. This is because before Brexit, the European Union was the UK's biggest trading partner. Almost half of the things the UK bought came from the EU, and there were no extra taxes on them. But after Brexit, British products couldn't just be sold freely in Europe. To fix this mistake, Britain signed a free trade deal with the EU in 2020, which meant they could trade again without taxes. But it was probably too late. The biggest problem for Britain is that its economy is based on services, and these types of economies are easily hurt by money problems. For example, in the 2008 money crisis, Europe and the West were hit hard, but China, which makes a lot of things, wasn't hurt as badly. That's why in 2008, while lots of people in finance and tech lost their jobs, companies like Nestle and P&G were fine because they make things people always need, like water, soap, and razors. Also, making things creates more jobs than the service industry does. Another huge loss from Brexit is that today, there is a big shortage of workers in the UK. According to 2024 numbers, the UK is short 30,000 nurses. So on one side, the UK's money is losing value, investment is down, and money isn't coming in. On the other side, the UK doesn't have the money to spend on its own basic healthcare. To make things worse, nobody in Europe cares about the UK's problems, because the UK chose to leave the European Union on its own. There are no jobs, prices keep going up, and as a result, British people are getting angrier. And they are taking that anger out on immigrants and people from other countries. The UK has probably never seen a situation like this before. So the UK is in a very deep mess.